The wedding invitation sat on my desk like a loaded gun. Dad's number flashed on my phone for the third time today, and I finally picked up, bracing myself for the conversation I'd been avoiding. "Sweetheart, there must be some mistake," he said, his voice carrying that familiar mix of concern and disappointment. "Ilara's name isn't on the guest list." I traced the edge of my engagement ring, buying time. "It's not a mistake, Dad." The silence that followed felt heavier than all the years of forced smiles and careful steps around my stepmother's moods. I could picture him in his study, probably running his hand through his salt and pepper hair the way he did when things weren't going according to plan. "Rowan, she's family. You can't possibly. Can we not do this?" I cut him off, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm getting married in 3 months. I want it to be perfect." "Perfect." He laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "How can it be perfect when you're excluding your stepmother of 15 years? The memory of last Christmas flashed through my mind, Ilara's subtle jabs at my career choices. Her accidental wine spill on my mother's handmade quilt, the way she'd convinced Dad to skip my graduation ceremony for her sister's birthday party. Each incident like a paper cut, small enough to deny, deep enough to bleed. "Dad, I need to go. Declan and I have a meeting with the florist." "This isn't like you, sweetheart. You're better than this kind of petty revenge." My hand tightened around the phone. "Revenge would be telling you about the trust fund papers I found in your office last month, the ones Ilara convinced you to change without telling me." The sharp intake of breath on the other end told me I'd hit home. I hadn't meant to reveal that card so soon, but his accusation had cracked something open inside me. "How did you?" "I have to go," I said, ending the call before he could respond. My phone immediately lit up with a text from Tessa. "Everything okay? Mom's asking about the seating chart." I smiled, grateful for my stepsister's timing. Tessa, the daughter of my mother's husband, had become more family to me than Ilara ever was. The irony wasn't lost on me. Another call from Dad came through. I watched it ring, remembering how he used to be my hero before Ilara. Before he became someone who could look me in the eye and lie about my future. I let it go to voicemail and opened my laptop to check the wedding venue details. 3 months until I started my new life with Declan. 3 months to decide if I was ready to let go of the old one. Mom's kitchen had always been my safe haven, but tonight it felt like a pressure cooker. The smell of her famous paella filled the air as she chopped vegetables with more force than necessary. She did what? Mom's knife came down hard on an innocent bell pepper. Changed Dad's trust fund arrangements. I leaned against the counter, watching her work. I wasn't supposed to find out. "That snake." She pointed the knife at me. "And your father just went along with it?" "Like he always does." I reached for a piece of tomato, but Mom swatted my hand away. "Dad called 3 more times today. Declan thinks I should just invite her to keep the peace. Declan doesn't know what she's capable of." Mom wiped her hands on her apron, turning to face me. "Remember your college graduation? When Dad couldn't come because of Ilara's sister's emergency birthday party?" I made air quotes. "The same sister who posted beach photos that weekend?" The front door opened, and Everett's warm voice called out, "Something smells amazing." He appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in his work clothes, and kissed Mom's cheek. The simple gesture made my chest ache. This was what real love looked like, not the careful dance my father performed around Ilara's moods. "Perfect timing," Mom said. "We're discussing the wedding guest list drama." Everett's face softened.
"Ah."
"Graham called me today." My stomach dropped. "What did he want?" "To ask me to talk some sense into you." Everett grabbed a beer from the fridge. "I told him you're perfectly sensible already." The doorbell rang before I could respond. Tessa burst in, waving her phone. "You're not going to believe this. Ilara just posted the most passive-aggressive Facebook status about ungrateful children and karma." "Show me," Mom demanded, abandoning her cooking. I stayed put, remembering the day Dad married Ilara. I was 12, still believing in happy endings. She'd hugged me at the reception, whispering, "I'll never try to replace your mother." 2 weeks later, she'd thrown out the birthday cards Mom had written for my future milestones. "She's tagged Dad in it," Tessa reported, scrolling. Oh, and there's a comment from her sister about toxic family members who need to be cut out. The irony, I muttered. Everett cleared his throat. You know, Rowan, sometimes the best revenge isn't fighting back. It's living well. That's what I'm trying to do, I said. But Dad keeps making it about her feelings, her needs. When has she ever considered mine? Mom's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her expression darkening. Speaking of your father, he and Alara want to have dinner. All of us. Tomorrow night. The kitchen fell silent except for the gentle bubbling of the paella. I thought about declining, but something in Mom's eyes told me this dinner might be exactly what I needed. A chance to finally lay everything bare. Tell them yes, I said, surprising everyone, including myself. It's time we all had an honest conversation. The restaurant Alara chose was exactly her style, all crystal chandeliers and white tablecloths. I arrived early, needing a moment to steady myself, only to find her already there, huddled with a woman I recognized as her friend Patricia. I slipped into a quiet corner, just close enough to hear their conversation. Alara's voice carried across the empty space, sharp and clear. Graham's getting soft about the trust fund, Alara said. He's talking about reversing the changes. Patricia clicked her tongue. After all your work convincing him, what changed? His precious daughter's wedding. Alara's laugh was brittle. He actually suggested we could use that money for her down payment instead of my sister's business venture. My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone, hitting record. Dad had promised that money would help Declan and me start our life together. He'd sworn nothing had changed. You can't let that happen, Patricia said. You've worked too hard to secure your future. What if things don't work out with Graham? They will. I just need to remind him who's been there these past 15 years. Alara's voice dropped lower. Besides, I have copies of those questionable tax returns he filed. Insurance, you might say. The hostess appeared, startling me. Your party has arrived, miss. I quickly pocketed my phone as Mom and Everett walked in, followed by Dad. Alara's face transformed instantly, a perfect mask of warmth sliding into place. Rowan, darling. She air-kissed my cheek, her perfume suffocating. We have so much to discuss. Dad hugged me, but I stayed stiff. The weight of what I'd just heard made it hard to breathe. He'd always taught me about integrity, about doing what's right. Now I knew he was letting Alara blackmail him. Before we start, Alara announced once we were seated, I want to clear the air about the wedding invitation. Mom's hand found mine under the table. Perhaps we should order first. No, Alara cut in. This needs to be addressed. Graham and I have discussed it, and we've decided that either I'm included in the wedding, or he won't be attending. The silence that followed felt like glass about to shatter. I looked at Dad, waiting for him to speak up, to choose me just once. He studied his menu instead. Well, I said, pulling out my phone, before you make any final decisions, Dad, you might want to hear something. Alara's face flickered with uncertainty as I placed my phone on the table. For the first time since I was 12, I saw real fear in her eyes. What's that? Dad asked. Insurance, I replied, using Alara's word. Of my own. Tessa's apartment became my refuge after the restaurant showdown. We sat on her balcony, the city lights blinking below us like distant stars. My phone hadn't stopped buzzing since I'd played the recording. Dad's called 6 times, I said, silencing another incoming call. Alara's threatening legal action for recording her without consent. Tessa topped off my wine glass. She's bluffing. She can't risk those tax returns becoming public. I never thought I'd become someone who collects blackmail material. The wine tasted bitter. I used to think I was better than that. Sometimes you have to fight fire with fire. Tessa leaned forward. But there's something else you should know. I overheard Mom talking to Dad last night about Alara. My stomach tightened. What about her? Apparently, this isn't the first time she's done this. Her first husband, she practically bankrupted him before leaving. Mom's friend was their neighbor back then. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. I pulled up my phone, searching for Alara's first husband. Within minutes, I found him, Thomas Chun, now living across the country. His profile picture showed a tired-looking man in his 60s. I should warn Dad, I said, reaching for my phone. Tessa caught my wrist.
Wait.
Look at this first. She handed me her tablet, open to a series of old newspaper articles. My father's name jumped out at me, Graham Foster, testifying as a character witness in Alara's divorce proceedings. 15 years ago, while he was still married to Mom. He knew her, I whispered. Before the divorce. There's more. Tessa's voice was gentle. Check the dates. The pieces fell into place with devastating clarity. Dad hadn't met Alara at that charity gala like he'd claimed. He'd known her for months before leaving Mom. My phone buzzed again. Declan this time. The wedding venue needed final numbers by tomorrow. Guest list confirmation. Father-daughter dance songs. I can't do this anymore, I said, standing up suddenly. I'm done playing their games. What are you thinking? I walked to the balcony rail, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Declan was probably working late at his office, believing I was just dealing with normal wedding stress. I'm thinking it's time to stop fighting for people who never fought for me. I turned back to Tessa. Will you help me plan a wedding that's actually about love? Not manipulation or appearances? Tessa smiled, raising her glass. To choosing your own family? To choosing peace, I replied, clinking my glass against hers. Even if it means letting go. My phone buzzed one final time, a text from Dad. We need to talk about your mother. There are things you don't understand. I deleted it without reading further. Some truths weren't worth knowing. The rehearsal dinner should have been a celebration. Instead, I stood in the venue's bathroom, staring at the email Dad had just sent. Attached were photos of Mom and Everett from 15 years ago, dated months before she and Dad separated. His message was simple. Still want to talk about affairs? A knock at the door made me jump. Rowan, it was Declan. Your father's here. With Alara. I hadn't invited them. My hands shook as I opened the door, finding Declan's worried face. I can ask them to leave, he said softly.
No.
I smoothed down my dress. Let's end this tonight. They sat at a table near the entrance, Dad in his best suit. Alara wearing a cream-colored dress that was too close to white. Mom and Everett were across the room, their faces tight with concern. Sweetheart. Dad stood as I approached. We need to clear the air before tomorrow. By showing me photos of Mom and Everett, my voice stayed steady, though my chest felt like it might crack open. That's your idea of clearing the air? Alara touched Dad's arm. Graham, perhaps we should. Don't. I cut her off. Don't pretend to mediate when you're the one who's been poisoning everything for 15 years. Rowan, Dad's voice hardened. You don't understand what happened back then. Your mother had already left you. I finished. Because you were seeing Alara. I found Thomas Chun, Dad. I know the timeline. The color drained from Alara's face.
Dad sat down heavily.
Tomorrow, I continued, I'm marrying someone who loves me enough to put me first. Everett's walking me down the aisle because he's shown me what a father should be. You're both uninvited, and this time, it's not just about the guest list. You can't, Alara started. I can. And I am. I pulled out my phone, showing them the screen. I've already transferred the trust fund money back to your account, Dad. I don't want anything from either of you anymore. Rowan, please. Dad reached for my hand. You're my daughter.
No.
I stepped back. I'm the child you left behind every time she chose you over me. I'm done competing for scraps of your attention. Declan appeared at my side, his hand finding mine. Across the room, Tessa was filming everything on her phone, insurance against whatever story Alara might spin later. Goodbye, Dad. I turned away, then paused. By the way, those photos you sent? Mom and Everett's first date was after you left. But you never asked, did you? You just believed what Alara told you. As we walked away, I heard Alara's sharp intake of breath, followed by Dad's chair scraping back. But I didn't turn around. Tomorrow was about new beginnings, not old wounds. And I was finally ready to let go. My wedding day dawned bright and clear, but the knock on my dressing room door shattered any peace I'd managed to find. Patricia, Alara's friend from the restaurant, stood there with an envelope and a sympathetic smile that didn't reach her eyes. "I thought you should see this," she said, handing me the envelope. "Alara's been planning this for months." Inside were medical documents, detailed enough to look real, vague enough to be concerning. A diagnosis that would require immediate attention, dated for today. The kind of emergency that would keep Dad from attending my wedding without raising suspicions. "She's not even sick, is she?" My hands crumpled the papers. Patricia shook her head. "She used her sister's doctor to create these. Graham's already canceled your breakfast meeting. He thinks they're heading to the hospital now." The mirror reflected my wedding dress, Mom's veil, everything perfect except for the truth burning in my hands. Tessa burst in, phone extended. "Dad just got a text from Graham," she said. "They're at Memorial Hospital. He's asking everyone to pray for." Stop. I turned away from my reflection. I don't want to hear her lies anymore. My phone lit up with Dad's message. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Alara needs me today. You understand, right? You always do." The last 3 words broke something inside me. I'd spent 15 years understanding, accepting, making excuses for him, each time believing it would be different next time. "I can expose this," Tessa offered, reaching for the documents. "Show everyone what she's doing."
No.
I stood up, smoothing my dress. That's what she wants. Drama, attention, proof that I'm the difficult one. I turned to Patricia. "Why are you really here?" She shifted uncomfortably. "Because I helped her plan this, and I have a daughter too. I couldn't let her win again." A text from Declan appeared. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. We can postpone, elope, anything you want." The solution hit me with sudden clarity. I'd been fighting so hard to prove something to Dad, to Lara, to everyone. But they weren't the ones I needed to convince. "Tell the coordinator we're starting early," I told Tessa, "before Dad can change his mind and show up to save the day." I faced Patricia. "And you can tell Alara she won. She can have him, all of him. I'm done competing for scraps of his attention." "Rowan," Tessa hesitated. "Are you sure?" I looked at my reflection again, but this time I saw something different. Not a daughter desperate for her father's love, but a woman choosing her own path. "Yes," I said, picking up my bouquet. "It's time to let go of the father I wanted and accept the one I got. Everett's waiting to walk me down the aisle, and unlike Dad, he's never needed an excuse to show up for me." The wedding march began, but it wasn't the music that made my heart stop. Through the chapel's side door, I saw Dad rushing in, still in his hospital clothes, his face flushed from running. Alara wasn't with him. Everett squeezed my arm. "We can wait." "No," I said, gripping my bouquet tighter. "We start now." As Everett guided me down the aisle, Dad moved toward us, his hand outstretched. "Rowan, please." Everett stepped between us, his voice low but firm. "Not now, Graham. She's my daughter," Dad protested, loud enough for the guests to hear. I turned to face him, 15 years of pain crystallizing into perfect clarity. "Then where were you an hour ago? Or last Christmas? Or at my graduation?" Alara was faking it. I pulled the medical documents from where I'd folded them into my bouquet. "Like she fakes everything." Patricia told me everything. The color drained from his face as he scanned the papers. Behind him, guests whispered, phones recorded, but for once, I didn't care about keeping up appearances. "I didn't know," he said weakly. "You never wanted to know." I handed him the documents. "Every time she pulled you away, every time she made me feel unwanted in my own family, you chose not to see it. I can fix this."
No.
I stepped back, Everett's steady presence behind me. "I'm not asking you to fix anything. I'm telling you I'm done. This moment, this wedding, it's not about you or Alara anymore. It's about the family I've chosen." Declan appeared at the altar, his eyes finding mine with unwavering support. Mom stood up from her seat, ready to intervene, but I shook my head slightly. "You can stay," I told Dad, "but only if you're here as a guest. Not as the father of the bride. That role belongs to someone who earned it." He looked at Everett, then at me, reality finally cracking his carefully maintained denial. Without another word, he walked to the back pew and sat down. Everett offered his arm again. Ready? I smiled, feeling lighter than I had in years. I've never been more ready. The wedding march resumed. As Everett walked me toward Declan, toward my future, I caught Mom's proud smile, Tessa's thumbs up, and the love radiating from my chosen family. Dad sat alone in the back, watching the role he'd surrendered being filled by a better man. It wasn't revenge that made this moment sweet. It was the simple truth that sometimes the family you choose loves you better than the family you're born with. And finally, I was at peace with that. 6 months after the wedding, a familiar envelope arrived at our new home. I recognized Dad's handwriting immediately, but this time, my hands didn't shake as I opened it. Inside was a check, the exact amount of the trust fund, and a letter. I set the check aside and unfolded the paper, Declan's morning coffee brewing in the background, grounding me in my new reality. I found Alara's divorce papers from her first marriage. Dad's letter began. You were right about everything. I'm staying with your uncle while the lawyers handle things. I know it's too late to be the father you needed, but I hope someday. The doorbell interrupted my reading. Through the window, I saw Everett standing on our porch, toolbox in hand, ready to help with the kitchen renovation we'd planned. Just like he'd promised. Just like he always showed up. I slipped the letter into my desk drawer, next to the wedding photo where Everett beamed proudly as he walked me down the aisle. Dad sat in the background, a blurred figure learning too late what it meant to be present. Come in, I called out, hearing Tessa's voice joining her father's. She'd brought paint samples, probably more than we needed, but that was Tessa, always going the extra mile for family. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Lunch later? Everett mentioned he's helping with the kitchen. I'll bring reinforcements. As I typed my reply, another message appeared from Patricia. Alara's leaving town. Graham's filing for divorce. Thought you should know. I didn't respond. The satisfaction I'd once craved at Alara's downfall felt hollow now. Instead, I watched through the window as Everett and Declan discussed renovation plans, their easy laughter carrying across the yard. The check and letter could wait, maybe forever. Or maybe just until I was ready to read about Dad's regrets without feeling like that 12-year-old girl again, waiting for him to choose her. Hey, Declan called from outside. We could use your opinion on something. I stepped onto the porch, into the warm sunshine and the embrace of my chosen family. Revenge hadn't healed me, love had. The love I'd found in Declan's unwavering support, in Tessa's fierce loyalty, in Mom's protective strength, and in Everett's quiet, steady presence. Dad's letter remained unfinished in my drawer, a bridge to a possible future I wasn't ready to cross. For now, I had a kitchen to renovate, a life to build, and a family that showed up not because they had to, but because they wanted to. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's getting better. And I had never been better than I was right now.